I'm Jane Meyer, and I'm joined by two of my fellow STAR trainers, Becki Lemke and Laurie Martin. Becki and Laurie and I have had a lot of experiences with coaching as we've helped teachers and programs and states to implement evidence-based reading instruction. So I thought it would be interesting to have a discussion about Jim Knight's article on the 7 success factors for instructional coaching. I asked Laurie and Becki to read the article and to make some notes. I see you've done your homework, thank you, about what resonated with them as they read the article and thought about their STAR coaching experiences.
Well, I guess I can jump right in. I think, the first thing that resonated was just at the beginning part of the article where he talks about the coach being more than an expert who's just, giving this kind of top-down advice, but really being somebody who's a partner with a teacher, who is going to open dialogue with the teacher, who will show respect for what the teacher already knows, and will guide them to reflect on their practices.
That's why when we set up the coaching, we set it up so that before the observation, the coach actually meets with the teacher and helps the teacher to come up with some focus questions. And then during the observation, the coach collects information that will help the teacher to understand the focus question and what the answer might be. And afterwards, the coach enters into dialogue and helps the teacher to reflect and to discuss and to kind of come up with solutions on their own.
Right.
And the other thing that resonated for me was the idea that the coach needs to build the relationship with the teacher through good communication, because I definitely believe that the coach can't be effective working with the teacher if they don't have a trust relationship with the teacher.
Right. Like he even says, good communicators know that speaking the truth is only half the battle, and that really the challenge is to speak in a way that the other person can hear what's being said.
I had an experience early on where I spoke in a way that the other person couldn't hear it. I was observing a teacher and she was going through the techniques and she really was not doing a good job. She had changed the techniques so much that they were no longer evidence-based. Sure. But in my attempt to help her, I just shut down communication because I just started kind of pointing out all the things that she was doing wrong. And then she just kind of, pulled back from me, understandably. And, I realize now that what I should have been doing was, opening up that conversation, listening to her, asking some questions to help her reflect rather than listing the things that she wasn't doing correctly.
Well, and I think that's why when he talks about the coach having an instructional playbook that has instructional techniques that have been proven to be effective, and then a checklist of guidelines for using those techniques, I don't believe that really he's talking about the coach checking off how well the teacher uses those techniques. I think that would destroy that trust relationship. You wouldn't have good communication
like I did.
Instance. Yeah.
But the coach needs to be familiar with the techniques. So like in STAR, we have evidence-based techniques for teaching reading and, and different elements of instruction that we know will maintain the evidence base of those techniques. So coaches do need to be familiar with that, and then they'll use that list of techniques and elements to guide their discussions with the teacher and help the teacher see how they may be adhering strongly to those techniques or may need to tweak or adjust what they're doing.
Yeah. What I hear us talking about is what Jim Knight was talking about, a balance between being respectful and responsive, but also being assertive in leading the change.
And Jane, you talked about an experience you had where you were too assertive in leading the change. When I first started coaching, I was out of balance on the other side, actually. I was a young teacher, and when I started coaching more experienced teachers, or especially program administrators, I was kind of uncomfortable at times. And I found that I needed to be a little bit more assertive, because it's not okay to just compliment them and tell them that things are great if things really aren't great. You need to help them to improve and to move forward. So you do need to be a little assertive in that way.
And I think that's where that playbook listing of elements could really help a coach, because they're looking at those elements, thinking about them as they do the observation, and then can show that to the teacher, it will help to kind of neutralize the coaching, keep it professional rather than really personal,
Yes.
and will help the door open for dialogue and for discussion.
I was also thinking about that kind of checklist and how it could be related to when Jim Knight talks about the data collection. Because if you're thinking about the checklist, that can help you to think about what kinds of data to collect during the observation. Because I'm thinking that the checklist, the teacher gets the focus question, and then you're thinking, what should I be gathering? What kinds of data might help me to, help this teacher? And maybe that checklist could be the answer to that.
Sure. I'm thinking about times when I've observed teachers who had difficulty balancing how much time they were talking with how much time the students actually got to practice the skills they were working on. And that would be something, a coach could work out with the teacher to actually time the various pieces of their lesson, and then have that data to work with the teacher to see really where they were on track and where they might need to maybe shorten up their teacher talk time. So that type of data collection could be very helpful.
Yeah. I like to use data when I observe. And one of the things I like to do is I like to plan with the teacher what kinds of data to collect that might be most helpful to them. And then when you observe and you share that data afterwards, I think that it's so much less judgmental. It's less personal because the coach and the teacher together are looking at what that information tells them and making choices about how that can help them to move forward.
Very true.
Okay, so this has been interesting. To sum up, we think that it's important for the coach to build balance between being responsive and respectful and also being assertive in leading the change. And we also think that the coach can do that by helping the teacher to reflect, look at data, by asking questions, and being kind of a partner with that teacher. Thanks a lot, ladies.